Chapter 1. The Christmas Question. Roger Bristle had always liked Christmas for its predictability. The same tree, the same ornaments, the same playlist of carols his mother insisted on playing even though half the family groaned at the sound of them. Predictability was safe. Predictability didn't ask questions. This year, predictability betrayed him. The dining room was warm with the smell of roasted turkey and cinnamon rolls. His mother had gone all out as usual. Table dressed in red and gold, candles flickering like tiny sentinels. Roger sat at the far end, carving a slice of ham with the precision of a surgeon, hoping no one noticed how quiet he was. He liked being quiet. Quiet meant invisible. Roger, his oldest sister, Claire, said, her voice cutting through the hum of conversation like a bell. She had that tone, the one that meant trouble. When are you going to give me a niece or nephew? The fork in Roger's hand froze mid-air. He looked up, blinking like someone who'd just been asked to recite the periodic table. Around the table, heads turned. His younger sister, Emily, smirked behind her wine glass. His parents exchanged a glance that Roger didn't like. Soft, expectant, almost conspiratorial. Someday, Roger said, shrugging. He tried to make it sound casual, like he'd been thinking about it all along. But his voice lacked conviction, and his body language betrayed him. He knew it. They knew it. Claire tilted her head, studying him like a puzzle piece that didn't fit. Someday? You're 36, Rog. Someday's starting to look like never. Emily laughed. Maybe he's waiting for the perfect woman to fall out of the sky. Roger forced a smile, the kind that didn't reach his eyes. If she falls out of the sky, I'll make sure to catch her. The table chuckled, but the question lingered like smoke. Roger focused on his plate, cutting his ham into smaller and smaller pieces, as if the answer might be hiding between the slices. Freddie, Claire's 3-year-old son, chose that moment to fling mashed potatoes across the table. The glob landed on Roger's shirt with a wet splat. Everyone laughed harder. Roger dabbed at the stain with a napkin, grateful for the distraction. Inside, though, his thoughts churned. He wasn't against love. He wasn't even against marriage in theory. But the idea of risking everything he'd built, his home, his savings, his peace, for something that could be dismantled by a court? No thank you. He'd seen too many friends lose everything in the name of love. Roger wasn't bitter. He was practical. And practicality didn't make for good dinner conversation. He glanced at his parents. They were smiling at each other, sharing a private joke. 40 years together and still laughing. Good for them. But Roger knew better than to believe that was the norm. For every couple like his parents, there were 5 others tearing each other apart in courtrooms. Roger, his mother said gently, pulling him from his thoughts. You know we just want you to be happy. I am happy, Roger said, and for the most part it was true. He had a good job, a house he owned outright, and a life that was quiet, peaceful. He cooked his own meals, kept his place clean, paid his bills on time. He didn't need anyone to take care of him. He'd been doing that his whole life. But as he looked around the table, at Claire whispering something to Emily, at his parents exchanging that look again, Roger felt the weight of their concern pressing in. They weren't going to let this go. Not tonight. Not ever. He smiled again, the polite kind, and reached for the gravy boat. Anyone need more gravy? Chapter 2. Family Intervention Light. Roger had hoped the Christmas question would fade like a bad joke, something tossed into the holiday air and forgotten by New Year's. But hope, as he was learning, was a fragile thing. It started with whispers, not the kind you imagine in dark corners, but the kind that float through kitchens when you're in the living room pretending to watch TV. Roger sat on the couch at his parents' house 2 days after Christmas, remote in hand, eyes fixed on a rerun of a cooking show he didn't care about. From the kitchen came the low hum of voices, Claire's sharp, Emily's softer, his mother's soothing like honey poured over toast. He's 36, Claire said, her voice carrying just enough for Roger to catch the words. It's not normal. Maybe he's just private, Emily offered, though her tone lacked conviction. Private? He's a vault, Claire shot back. I swear, if he doesn't start dating soon, he's going to turn into one of those men who talks to his houseplants. Roger muted the TV. He didn't own houseplants. Too much maintenance. He preferred things that didn't require watering or sunlight, like his leather recliner and his collection of classic novels. His mother's voice floated in next. Girls, don't pressure him. He'll find someone when he's ready. When he's ready? Claire scoffed. At this rate, Freddie will be in college before Roger even goes on a date. Roger sighed and unmuted the TV, letting the cheerful voice of a celebrity chef drown out the conversation. He wasn't angry. Not really. They meant well. But their concern was like a sweater 2 sizes too small, tight, itchy, impossible to ignore. Later, as he slipped on his coat to leave, his father intercepted him at the door. Son, he said, in that tone fathers use when they're about to dispense wisdom you didn't ask for. You know, life's not just about work and bills. Roger smiled politely. I know, Dad. His father clapped him on the shoulder. Your mother and I worry you're lonely. I'm not, Roger said, and for the most part it was true. He liked his quiet life. He liked coming home to a space that was his, where nothing was out of place and no one asked questions about nieces and nephews. But as he drove home through streets lined with twinkling lights, Roger felt the weight of their words settle in his chest. Lonely. Was he? He didn't think so. He had routines, hobbies, a job he was good at. He wasn't unhappy. He wasn't anything. Really, just steady, like a clock ticking in an empty room. Still, the whispers lingered. And Roger had the uneasy sense that his family wasn't done with him yet. Chapter 3. The coffee shop collision. Roger liked routines. Routines were safe. They didn't ask questions about nieces or nephews or why you were 36 and still single. They just were. And his Saturday morning coffee run was the crown jewel of his routine. The cafe was small, tucked between a florist and a bookstore, with mismatched chairs and a chalkboard menu that changed every week. Roger liked it because no one bothered him there. He could order his black coffee, sit by the window, and watch the world without being part of it. This Saturday, the world had other plans. He pushed open the door, the bell chiming overhead, and stepped inside. The place was buzzing. College kids hunched over laptops, couples sharing pastries, a toddler screaming about a muffin. Roger joined the line, hands in his coat pockets, eyes on the menu even though he always ordered the same thing. Medium black coffee, he said when it was his turn. The barista, a guy with a man bun and a smile too bright for this early in the morning, nodded. Name? Roger. He moved to the pickup counter, scanning the room for an empty table. There, by the window, his usual spot. Perfect. He reached for his coffee just as someone else did, and the collision was instant. Hot liquid sloshed over the rim, splattering his sleeve. Roger jerked back, biting down on a curse. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. The voice was warm, frantic, undeniably feminine. Roger looked up and froze. She was unexpected. Mid-30s, maybe, with chestnut hair pulled into a messy bun and eyes the color of strong tea. She clutched her own cup like it was a lifeline, cheeks flushed with embarrassment. Roger blinked. It's fine, he said, though his sleeve begged to differ. No, it's not fine. She grabbed a stack of napkins and started dabbing at his arm. I wasn't looking. I was trying to answer a text and… Ugh, I'm an idiot. Roger held up a hand. Really, it's okay. I've survived worse. She stopped mid-dab, eyes flicking up to his. There was a pause, a beat too long to be casual. Then she smiled, and it was the kind of smile that made Roger's stomach do something unfamiliar. Something unsettling. I'm Nora, she said, offering a hand that smelled faintly of cinnamon. Roger hesitated, then shook it. Roger. Well, Roger, let me buy you another coffee. It's the least I can do. You don't have to. I insist. Her tone left no room for argument. She turned to the barista, already pulling out her wallet. Another medium black for Roger, please. Roger stood there, feeling oddly like a guest in his own routine. This wasn't how Saturdays were supposed to go. Saturdays were quiet, predictable, safe. But as Nora handed him the fresh cup, her fingers brushing his just slightly, Roger wondered, against his better judgment, if safe was overrated. Chapter 4. The algorithm attack. Roger had never trusted technology beyond what was necessary to pay bills and stream documentaries about ancient civilizations. Dating apps? They were the digital equivalent of carnival games, flashy, rigged, and designed to separate fools from their dignity. Which was why, when his phone buzzed with a notification that read, "You have a new match," Roger nearly dropped it into his bowl of oatmeal. He stared at the screen, baffled. New match? He didn't even have an account. At least, he didn't think he did. The app icon was bright pink, with a heart that looked like it had been drawn by someone who'd never seen an actual heart. Roger tapped it, and there it was, his profile. His name, his age, his photo, taken at last summer's barbecue, holding a plate of ribs and looking like he'd just been asked to solve a math problem. Roger blinked. What the hell? He scrolled down. The bio read, quiet guy, loves good coffee and family time. Looking for someone who enjoys laughter and deep conversations. Roger snorted. He hadn't written that. He didn't even say things like that. His idea of deep conversation was debating whether to buy the generic brand of dish soap. Then it hit him. Claire. Emily. Of course. He called Claire first. She answered on the second ring, sounding far too cheerful for someone who had just committed a crime against his privacy. Roger. How's your Saturday? Cut the act, Roger said. Why am I on a dating app? There was a pause, then a laugh. Oh, you saw it. Great. Emily and I were wondering when you'd notice. Notice? You created a profile for me. Technically, Emily did the typing. I just picked the photo. Roger pinched the bridge of his nose. Claire. Look. Rog, we love you. But you're not exactly putting yourself out there. You need a little nudge. A nudge? This is identity theft. It's matchmaking, she corrected. Besides, you already have a match. Her name's… Wait. Let me check. Sophie. She's a teacher. Loves hiking. Roger groaned. Hiking was his personal definition of hell. Bugs, sweat, and the constant risk of falling off a cliff? No thank you. I'm deleting it, he said. No, you're not, Claire replied sweetly. Just give it a chance. One date. If you hate it, we'll back off. Roger hung up before he said something he'd regret. He stared at the app again, thumb hovering over the delete button. He should erase it. He wanted to erase it. Instead, he tapped on Sophie's profile. Her photo showed a woman with curly hair and a smile that could power a small city. Her bio read, "Love the outdoors, dogs, and spontaneous adventures. Looking for someone kind and grounded." Roger sighed. He was grounded, all right, like a tree stump. Spontaneous adventures? His idea of spontaneity was buying the good coffee instead of the store brand. Still, something stopped him from deleting the app. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was Claire's voice echoing in his head. Or maybe, though he'd never admit it, it was the faint, ridiculous hope that life could surprise him. Roger set the phone down and stared at his oatmeal, now cold and congealed. He had no idea what he was doing. But for the first time in a long time, he felt unpredictable. And that was terrifying. Chapter 5. The first date debacle. Roger had never been a man to panic, but staring at his reflection in the bathroom mirror, he felt something close to it. His shirt was fine blue, clean, ironed. His jeans were fine dark, not frayed, not trying too hard. He looked average, which was exactly what he was. Average Roger, about to go on his first date in 36 years. He blamed Claire, and Emily, and maybe himself for not deleting that app when he had the chance. Sophie had suggested a trendy little bistro downtown. Roger had Googled it, exposed brick walls, Edison bulbs, a menu full of things that sounded like they belonged in a chemistry lab. He hated it already. The drive was uneventful, except for the part where Roger rehearsed small talk in his head like a man preparing for a job interview. Ask about her hobbies. Compliment her shoes. Don't mention your existential dread about marriage laws. Easy. He arrived 10 minutes early, because being late was chaos and Roger avoided chaos like the plague. The hostess led him to a table by the window. He sat, hands folded, scanning the menu. Charred octopus with saffron aioli. Absolutely not. Beet tartare. What even was that? Roger. The voice was bright, confident. He looked up and there she was, Sophie. Curly hair, radiant smile, wearing a scarf that looked like it had been stolen from a rainbow. "Hi," Roger said, standing so fast he nearly knocked over his water glass. "Smooth," she laughed, sliding into the seat across from him. "I'm so glad you came. I was half worried you'd ghost me." Roger blinked. "Ghost you? You know, disappear. Not show up." She grinned. "You don't strike me as the ghosting type." Roger managed to smile. "No, I'm more of the show up and order something I can pronounce type." She laughed again, and Roger felt a flicker of relief. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad. Then the waiter arrived. "Can I start you off with drinks?" he asked, all charm and bow tie. Sophie ordered a craft cocktail with a name that sounded like a poem. Roger ordered water because cocktails were unpredictable and he needed his wits about him. When the food discussion began, Roger panicked. Sophie was raving about the beet tartare, so he nodded like he understood. When the waiter turned to him, Roger blurted, "The, charred octopus." The words tasted like betrayal. Roger hated seafood. He hated anything with tentacles. But it was out there now, floating in the air like a bad decision. The conversation started fine. Sophie talked about her students, her love of hiking, her rescue dog named Juniper. Roger nodded, smiled, asked questions. He even cracked a joke about hiking being his personal Everest, which earned a laugh. Then the octopus arrived. It stared at him from the plate, curled and blackened, like something dredged from the depths of a nightmare. Roger swallowed hard and picked up his fork. He speared a piece, chewed, and immediately regretted every life choice that had led him here. "You okay?" Sophie asked, watching him with amused eyes. "Delicious," Roger lied, forcing a smile as the rubbery texture fought back. The rest of the meal was a blur of awkward silences and Roger's internal monologue screaming, "Abort mission, abort." When the check came, Sophie offered to split it. Roger insisted on paying because if this was going to be a disaster, at least he'd fund it properly. Outside, the night air was cool, sharp against his skin. Sophie smiled, pulling her scarf tighter. "Thanks for dinner, Roger. I had a good time." Roger hesitated. Did she mean that? Or was it the polite kind of good time, the kind people say before deleting your number? "Me too," he said, because what else could he say? "Me too," except for the octopus and the existential dread? She waved, walking toward her car. Roger watched her go, feeling confused. It hadn't been terrible. It hadn't been great. It had been something. As he drove home, Roger decided two things. 1. He was never eating octopus again. 2. If this was what dating was like, he was doomed. Chapter 6. Enter the neighbor. Roger had always liked his street for one reason. It was quiet. The kind of quiet where you could hear the wind rustle through the maple trees and the occasional bark of a distant dog. No drama, no chaos, no unexpected visitors. Until the moving truck arrived. Roger noticed it on a Tuesday evening as he pulled into his driveway, headlights sweeping across cardboard boxes stacked on the curb. A woman stood among them, hands on her hips, surveying the scene like a general planning an invasion. She wore jeans, a faded hoodie, and an expression that said she was 2 seconds away from declaring war on the moving company. Roger tried to slip past unnoticed, but fate, or maybe the universe's sense of humor, had other plans. "Excuse me." Her voice rang out, sharp but not unfriendly. Roger froze, keys halfway to his pocket. "Yes?" he said, turning slowly, like a man caught in a spotlight. She jogged over, strands of chestnut hair escaping her ponytail. Up close, she looked familiar. Not in the I know you way, but in the you belong in a coffee shop collision way. And then it hit him, Nora, the woman who had baptized his sleeve in espresso 2 weeks ago. "You're Roger, right?" she said, smiling like this was the most natural thing in the world. Roger blinked. Yes. I thought so. I recognized you from the cafe." "Small world." She gestured toward the boxes. "I'm moving in next door." Roger stared at the house beside his, the one that had been empty for months. "Oh, welcome. Thanks." She grinned, then rolled her eyes toward the moving truck. "Though if these guys drop one more box, I might start charging admission for the disaster show." Roger chuckled, quiet, but genuine. "Need a hand?" Her face lit up. "Would you? You'd be saving me from a nervous breakdown." Roger hesitated. Helping meant talking. Talking meant interaction. But she looked frazzled, and Roger wasn't heartless. He nodded. "Sure." 10 minutes later, Roger was hauling boxes labeled kitchen and books into the house while Nora directed traffic like a seasoned foreman. The place smelled of fresh paint and possibility. Roger noticed little things. A stack of novels on the counter, a framed photo of a dog, a coffee maker that looked like it belonged in a science lab. "You read a lot?" he asked, nodding toward the books. "Obsessively," Nora said, wiping her forehead with the back of her hand. "Fiction, mostly, though I dabble in biographies when I want to feel inadequate." Roger smiled. "I stick to history. Less pressure." She laughed, and the sound was warm, easy. Roger felt something shift, small but undeniable. He liked talking to her. He liked the way she didn't fill silence with noise, the way her humor had edges but not barbs. When the last box was inside, Nora handed him a bottle of water. "You're officially my favorite neighbor." Roger shrugged, trying to play it cool. "I'm your only neighbor." "Details," she said, grinning. "Still counts." As Roger walked back to his house, bottle in hand, he felt different. Lighter, maybe, or unsettled. He wasn't sure. All he knew was that his quiet street wasn't so quiet anymore. And for reasons he couldn't explain, that didn't feel like a bad thing. Chapter 7. Family escalates. Roger should have known something was up the moment Claire texted him. "Barbecue at our place Saturday. Bring your appetite." There was an emoji. Claire only used emojis when she was plotting. Saturday arrived warm and bright, the kind of day that made people believe in optimism. Roger pulled into Claire's driveway, mentally preparing for the usual family chatter. He was halfway to the backyard when he heard laughter. Familiar voices, plus one that wasn't. He rounded the corner and froze. Nora. She stood by the grill, chatting with Emily like they'd been friends for years. She wore a sundress, simple and breezy, and held a glass of lemonade like it belonged in her hand. Roger's stomach did that unsettling flip again. Claire spotted him and beamed. "Roger, you made it." Her tone was too sweet, too innocent. Roger narrowed his eyes. "Hi," he said, forcing casual. "Nora. Didn't expect to see you here." Nora smiled, easy and warm. "Your sister invited me. Said it'd be a good way to meet the neighbors." Roger shot Claire a look that could have curdled milk. Claire just grinned, flipping burgers like a woman who feared nothing. "Small world," Roger muttered, grabbing a plate. The backyard buzzed with conversation. Emily talking about Freddie's latest obsession with dinosaurs. Claire bragging about her garden. Nora laughing at something Roger's dad said. Roger hovered near the cooler, sipping soda and trying not to look like a man under siege. Eventually, Nora wandered over. "So," she said, leaning against the picnic table, "is this what family gatherings are always like? Or did they roll out the red carpet for me?" Roger smirked. "This is the deluxe package. Usually there's less ambush." She laughed, and Roger felt his defenses wobble. There was something about her. Unpretentious, sharp, funny without trying too hard. He liked that. He liked her. "Your sisters are great," Nora said, glancing toward Claire and Emily, who were whispering like conspirators. "Very enthusiastic." "That's one word for it," Roger said dryly. They talked about books, coffee, the absurdity of dating apps. Roger didn't mention his recent octopus trauma. Nora told a story about her dog stealing a neighbor's steak, and Roger laughed harder than he had in months. When the sun dipped low and the fireflies came out, Roger found himself wishing the evening wouldn't end. But it did, as all evenings do. Nora said goodbye, hugging Claire and Emily, then turning to Roger with a smile that lingered just a second too long. "See you around, neighbor," she said. Roger watched her walk down the driveway, feeling something he hadn't felt in years. A pull, quiet but insistent. And for the first time, He wondered if his sister's meddling wasn't entirely terrible. Chapter 8. Unexpected confession. Roger wasn't sure what compelled him to knock on Nora's door that evening. Maybe it was the barbecue, still replaying in his mind like a highlight reel. Maybe it was the way she'd said see you around, neighbor, light, casual but with something underneath. Or maybe, just maybe, it was the fact that for the first time in years, Roger didn't want to spend a Saturday night alone with his recliner and a documentary about Roman aqueducts. He stood on her porch, hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets, rehearsing an excuse. Just checking if you need anything. Just being neighborly. Anything but the truth. I wanted to see you. The door opened before he could knock. Nora stood there, barefoot, holding a mug of tea. Her hair was down, soft waves brushing her shoulders. She looked surprised and then she smiled. Roger, she said, leaning against the doorframe. You okay? Yeah, Roger said quickly. I was just, out for a walk. Nora glanced at the dark street behind him. A walk? At 9 o'clock. Roger cleared his throat. Couldn't sleep. She laughed softly, stepping aside. Come in. I'll make you tea. Roger hesitated, then crossed the threshold. Her house was warm, cozy, filled with the faint scent of vanilla. Books lined the shelves, a dog bed sat in the corner, and a framed photo of Nora with a golden retriever smiled from the mantel. Juniper, she said, noticing his glance. My partner in crime. She's at my sister's tonight. Roger nodded, sinking into an armchair while Nora disappeared into the kitchen. He looked around, feeling oddly at ease. This wasn't like the bistro, all exposed brick and pretension. This was real, lived in, comfortable. Nora returned with a second mug and handed it to him. Chamomile, she said. Good for insomniacs and people who pretend they're out for walks. Roger smiled, taking the mug. Thanks. They sat in silence for a moment, sipping tea. Then Nora spoke, her voice softer now. Can I tell you something? Roger looked up. Sure. She set her mug down, fingers tracing the rim. I'm not great at this. Dating. Relationships. People assume I am because I'm outgoing, but honestly, I've had my share of disasters. Roger blinked. Disasters. She laughed, but it was tinged with something heavier. One guy ghosted me after 3 months. Another broke up with me over text on my birthday. And then there was the one who thought commitment was a 4-letter word. Roger frowned. That sounds awful. It was, she said simply. So now I'm cautious. I like my independence. I like my space. And sometimes I wonder if that makes me broken. Roger stared at her, the words settling like stones in his chest. Broken? He knew that feeling. He'd lived in it for years, convinced that his refusal to risk marriage made him defective somehow. You're not broken, he said quietly. You're careful. There's a difference. She looked at him then, really looked, and Roger felt something shift, like a door opening in a room he didn't know existed. What about you? She asked. Any disasters? Roger hesitated. He could lie. He could deflect. But for reasons he couldn't explain, he didn't. I've never had a relationship, he said. Nora blinked. Never. Never, Roger repeated, forcing a small smile. Not because I didn't want to, just because I didn't want to lose everything if it went wrong. Her brow furrowed. Lose everything? Roger shrugged, staring into his tea. I've seen what happens. Friends losing their homes, their kids, their peace. I built a life I like. I didn't want to gamble it. Silence stretched between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was honest. Nora reached out, her fingers brushing his hand. A simple gesture, but it felt like a spark in the dark. Maybe, she said softly, it's not about gambling. Maybe it's about finding someone who makes the risk worth it. Roger looked at her, and for the first time in his life, he wondered if that someone was sitting right in front of him. Chapter 9. The misunderstanding. Roger woke up the next morning feeling different. Not bad, not good, just unsettled, like someone had rearranged the furniture in his mind. He kept replaying Nora's words. Maybe it's not about gambling. Maybe it's about finding someone who makes the risk worth it. It sounded simple. It sounded terrifying. He spent the day in a fog, alternating between convincing himself he'd imagined the spark and wondering if he should do something about it. By evening, he decided to take the coward's route. Do nothing. Let things stay neighborly. Safe. Then Nora texted. Hey, thanks for last night. It was nice to talk to someone who gets it. Roger stared at the screen, heart thudding. Someone who gets it. That meant something, didn't it? He typed back. Yeah, same here. Then deleted it. Then typed it again. Then deleted it again. Finally, he sent it and tossed the phone on the couch like it was radioactive. 5 minutes later, another ping. We should do it again sometime. Maybe dinner. Roger froze. Dinner. That was a date, wasn't it? Or was it just dinner? People ate dinner all the time without romantic undertones. He overthought it until his brain tied itself in knots. Before he could respond, a third message popped up. Unless you're not into that. Totally fine if you're not. Roger read it twice, and panic bloomed. Not into that. Did she mean not into her? Did she think he wasn't interested? Was she fishing for rejection so she could save face? His stomach churned. He hated ambiguity. Ambiguity was chaos. He typed, "I'm not really looking for anything serious," then stared at it, horrified. That wasn't what he meant. He meant he was cautious, not uninterested. But his thumb hit send before his brain could intervene. The silence that followed was deafening. Roger paced the living room, replaying the message in his head. Not really looking for anything serious. Sounded cold. Dismissive. Like he'd slammed a door she'd only cracked open. When her reply finally came, it was short. "Got it. Thanks for being honest." Roger sat down hard, the weight of those words pressing on his chest. He'd wanted to protect himself, to keep things simple. Instead, he'd built a wall, and Nora was on the other side of it. For the first time in years, Roger felt something he couldn't shrug off. Regret. Chapter 10. The turning point. Roger didn't plan on stopping by his parents' house that Sunday. He'd intended to spend the day reorganizing his garage. A safe, solitary task that didn't involve feelings or text messages gone wrong. But somehow, he ended up in his father's workshop, sitting on a stool while the old man tinkered with a radio that looked older than Roger himself. "You look like someone kicked your dog," his father said without looking up. Roger sighed. "I don't have a dog." "Exactly," his father replied, adjusting a knob. "If you did, you'd have someone to talk to besides me." Roger smirked, but it faded quickly. He stared at the floor, words pressing against his teeth. Finally, he let them out. "I think I messed something up." His father set down the screwdriver and turned, eyebrows raised. "With work?" "No." Roger hesitated. "With someone." "Ah." His father leaned back, folding his arms. "The neighbor." Roger blinked. "How do you—" "Your mother mentioned her. Said she seemed nice. And you've been walking around like a man who lost his wallet and his pride." Roger groaned. "I sent her a text. Came out wrong." "What did you say?" "That I wasn't looking for anything serious." His father whistled low. "Well, that'll do it." Roger rubbed his face. "I didn't mean it like that. I meant, I'm cautious. I didn't want to lead her on." His father studied him for a long moment, then spoke, voice steady. "Roger, you've spent your whole life avoiding risk. I get it. You're careful. You like control. But let me tell you something. Love isn't a contract you can negotiate. It's a leap. And yeah, sometimes you fall. But sometimes," he smiled faintly, "sometimes you land somewhere worth staying." Roger stared at him, the words sinking deep. A leap. He hated leaps. Leaps were unpredictable, dangerous. But as he sat there, he realized something. His so-called safety wasn't freedom. It was fear dressed up as logic. "What if it doesn't work?" Roger asked quietly. His father shrugged. "Then you pick yourself up and try again. But if you never try, you'll spend your life wondering what you missed." Roger left the workshop with those words echoing in his head. By the time he pulled into his driveway, his pulse was steady, his mind clear. He didn't know what he was going to say to Nora. He just knew he had to say something. Because for the first time in 36 years, Roger Bristle was ready to take a leap. Chapter 11. The grand gesture, Roger style. Roger had never been a man for grand gestures. Flashy declarations, skywriting, serenades under windows, those belonged in movies, not in the life of a man whose idea of excitement was buying the good brand of coffee filters. But as he stood in his kitchen, staring at a blank notepad, he knew he had to do something. Something that said, "I'm willing to try. I'm willing to risk." Claire and Emily had offered advice, of course. Claire suggested flowers and a handwritten poem. Emily suggested a flash mob. Roger had hung up on both of them before they could finish their sentences. He didn't need spectacle. He needed sincerity. So he thought about Nora, about the way her eyes lit up when she talked about books, the way she laughed at his dry humor, the way she confessed her own caution like it was a secret she trusted him with. And then he knew what to do. Saturday afternoon, Roger walked next door carrying a small box wrapped in plain brown paper. Inside was a first edition of Nora's favorite novel. He tracked it down online after remembering her mention of it during the barbecue. Tucked between the pages was a note, written in his neat, deliberate handwriting. "You said maybe it's about finding someone who makes the risk worth it. I don't know if I'm that someone yet, but I'd like the chance to find out. Dinner? My treat. No octopus." Roger, he stood on her porch, heart pounding like a drum in a quiet room. When Nora opened the door, her expression shifted from surprise to curiosity. "Hey," she said, smiling softly. "What's this?" Roger handed her the box, resisting the urge to bolt. "Just something I thought you'd like." She opened it slowly, fingers brushing the paper, and when she saw the book, her breath caught. "Roger, this is wow." Her eyes lifted to his, and for a moment, the world narrowed to that look, warm, astonished, maybe even a little hopeful. "I didn't mean what I texted," Roger said, words tumbling out before fear could stop them. "I was scared. Still am, honestly. But I don't want that to be the reason I miss this." Silence stretched, but it wasn't heavy. It was full of possibility of something new taking root. Nora smiled then, slow and bright. "Dinner sounds perfect. And no octopus." Roger laughed. relief washing over him like sunlight after rain. For the first time in years, he felt the ground shift beneath his feet, and instead of pulling back, he leaned in. Because maybe, just maybe, the leap was worth it. Chapter 12. Resolution and Laughter. Roger had never been so aware of his own heartbeat. It thudded steadily as he stood outside the little Italian restaurant Nora had suggested. A cozy place with warm lighting and the smell of garlic drifting out the door like an invitation. This wasn't like the bistro disaster. This felt, right, familiar but new. Nora arrived a few minutes later wearing a simple navy dress and that smile, the one that made Roger feel like maybe he wasn't as hopeless as he thought. "No octopus tonight?" she teased as they walked in. "Not unless it's hiding in the lasagna," Roger said, and she laughed, the sound easing the knot in his chest. Dinner was easy. Conversation flowed like water, books, music, the absurdity of dating apps. Roger even told her about the infamous octopus incident, and Nora laughed so hard she nearly spilled her wine. For the first time, Roger wasn't rehearsing lines in his head. He was just there, present, and it felt good. Halfway through dessert, Roger's phone buzzed. He ignored it, but Nora raised an eyebrow. "Popular tonight?" Roger sighed and glanced at the screen. A group text from Claire and Emily. "How's the date? Is she amazing? Are you married yet? Send pics." Followed by a gif of a dancing octopus. Roger groaned. "My sisters," he explained, showing her the screen. Nora laughed. "They're invested." "That's one word for it," Roger muttered, typing back. "Stop eating tiramisu. We'll report later." When they stepped outside, the night was cool. Stars scattered like confetti across the sky. Roger walked Nora to her car, hands shoved in his pockets, heart pounding like it had in his father's workshop. He wanted to say something, something that mattered. "I had a great time," he said finally. "Me too," Nora replied, her voice soft but certain. Roger hesitated, then added, "I'd like to do it again." Nora smiled, and it wasn't just polite. It was bright, real, the kind of smile that said yes without saying the word. "I'd like that too." As she drove away, Roger stood there, feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not the vague, someday kind. The real kind. The kind that made him believe maybe quiet didn't have to mean alone. Back at home, his phone buzzed again. "Claire? Well? Emily? Did you propose?" Roger shook his head, grinning despite himself, and typed, "No proposals. Just a good night." Claire replied instantly, "That's how it starts, Rog. That's how it starts." Roger set the phone down, still smiling. For once, he didn't mind the noise, because somewhere in the quiet, something new had begun. Chapter 13. Epilogue. A new kind of quiet. Roger Bristle's dining room had never been this loud. Laughter spilled across the table like wine, mingling with the clink of silverware and the chatter of voices. His parents sat at one end, smiling like they'd orchestrated the whole thing. Claire and Emily occupied the other, whispering conspiratorially between bites of potato salad. Freddie, perched in a booster seat, was making a game out of launching peas across the table. And in the middle of it all, Nora, laughing at Freddie's antics, passing the bread basket, fitting into the chaos like she'd always belonged. Roger watched her, a quiet smile tugging at his lips. His house had never felt so alive. For years, he'd equated quiet with peace, solitude with safety. But tonight, he realized something. Quiet wasn't about the absence of sound. It was about the presence of comfort. And comfort, he was learning, could come with laughter and clinking glasses and a 3-year-old demanding more juice. "Uncle Roger," Freddie shouted, waving a spoon like a sword. "Look, dinosaur peas." Roger chuckled, leaning over to inspect the green blobs. "Ferocious," he said solemnly. "Better eat them before they escape." Freddie giggled and popped one into his mouth, triumphant. Across the table, Claire caught Roger's eye and mouthed, "Told you so." Emily winked. Roger rolled his eyes, but he didn't mind. Not tonight. After dinner, when the plates were cleared and Freddie was chasing imaginary dinosaurs through the living room, Roger stepped out onto the porch with Nora. The evening air was cool, scented with lilacs from the garden. Fireflies blinked in the dark like tiny lanterns. "Your family's great," Nora said, smiling softly. "A little enthusiastic, but great." Roger laughed. "That's one word for it." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, listening to the hum of voices inside. Then Nora turned to him, her expression warm, steady. "You okay?" Roger nodded. Better than okay. And he meant it. For the first time in 36 years, Roger Bristle wasn't thinking about risk or loss or what might go wrong. He was thinking about possibility, about the way Nora's hand brushed his as they stood there, about the laughter spilling from his house, about the simple truth that life was messy and unpredictable and, sometimes, worth every leap. He smiled, quiet and certain. "Thanks for making my street a little less quiet." Nora grinned. "Anytime, neighbor." As they walked back inside, Roger realized something he'd never expected. Someday wasn't a distant dream anymore. Someday was here, and it was laughing in his living room.